Welcome to The Explainer. The attack in Bondi was more than just a tragedy. For many, it was a serious wake-up call. Today, we're going to dig into the extremist connections that have now come to light and what they tell us about the threats that might be hiding just below the surface. All right, let's just get right to the single biggest development. Authorities in New South Wales have made the call to officially label the Bondi attack a terrorist act. Now, that's not just a word. It completely changes everything about the investigation. It means this wasn't a random act of violence. It was driven by a specific and dangerous ideology. So, what does that declaration actually mean for the case? And what was the evidence that was so powerful it led them to make that call so quickly and with such certainty? That's what we're about to unpack. But before we get into all the intelligence details, it's so important to remember the human side of this story. Let's just take a moment to go back to what happened on that bridge in North Bondi, which is now this huge, somber crime scene. The human toll here is just staggering. 15 lives were tragically cut short in an act of violence that has just sent shockwaves across the entire country. 15 people who never made it home to their families. A reporter on the ground said something that really puts it perfectly. In the days after an attack like this, that abstract number, it stops being a number. It turns into names and faces and stories. A heartbreaking reality. And when you see who the victims were, it just paints this tragic picture of how indiscriminate this was. The youngest, a 10-year-old girl, Matilda, whose life was just getting started. And the oldest, a great-grandparent. Just an entire community and so many families completely shattered. But in the face of all this horror, the Bondi community has responded with this really powerful display of unity. You can feel the grief, for sure, but there's also this incredible sense of solidarity, a refusal to let this act of violence define them. You can just see these seas of flowers and countless handwritten notes that are now lining the whole area. It's really become a place for people to come and pay their respects. Even the first responders, the ones who saw the absolute worst of it, have been coming by for these quiet moments of reflection. So, as the community mourns, the investigation is moving at lightning speed. Now we have to turn to the perpetrators and the really chilling evidence that led directly to that terror declaration. This is where we start to understand the why behind this awful attack. The attack was carried out by a father and his son, a 50-year-old man and his 24-year-old kid. The question at the absolute heart of this whole investigation is, what could possibly motivate a father and son to do something so horrible? And the evidence that investigators found, well, it's pretty undeniable. They discovered that both shooters had actually pledged allegiance to ISIS. In their car, they found ISIS flags. And on top of that, they also found Improvised Explosive Devices, IEDs, right there in the same vehicle. That combination is what sealed the deal for the terror declaration. So, of course, these findings have kicked off a massive joint counterterrorism investigation. But they're also raising some very serious and, frankly, very uncomfortable questions for Australia's intelligence agencies. Basically, how was this missed? And here's the part that is really stunning. This threat did not just pop up out of nowhere. We now know that at least one of the shooters had known links to ISIS that go back 6 years. And even more concerning, ASIO, that's the Australian Security Intelligence Organization, they actually investigated these links back in 2019. And that, of course, leads to the billion-dollar question that authorities and the public are now asking. What exactly did that 2019 investigation find? And what, if anything, was done about it? So right now, a huge investigation is trying to piece together that exact timeline. The goal is to figure out what was known, when it was known, and what actions were or weren't taken based on that intelligence. This whole tragedy really forces all of us to grapple with a critical question about national security. It shines a spotlight on that razor-thin line between monitoring a potential threat and actually intervening to prevent an attack. We're all left wondering, where do we draw that line? And in this case, was it drawn in the right place